What's going on, everyone? So I did a video diving into the recent news about Zach Lavine and Nikola Vucevic, and that the Chicago Bulls want to get off of them. They want to get the best draft pick in this year's draft as possible. This draft is looked at as a very deep draft, and so if they can unload Zach Lavine as well as a Nikola Vucevic, they would be more than happy to do so. Supposedly, they'd even be interested in including like an IO, essentially get the guys for really nothing, right? They kind of want a first for Vuce because also he's having such a great season, so they're kind of like, like, hey, we'd like something of value. But even most of the Chicago reports are kind of like the Bulls would essentially just give them away, right? Like maybe if you had to give up a first, if you could get IO in the deal also, right? If you get like Lavine, IO, and Vu, sure, right? Getting a young guard plus Vu and Zach Lavine would be ridiculous. Problem is getting to that point, right? But the more that I think about it, obviously I'm a big Zach Lavine guy. Made the argument numerous times about Zach Lavine. Every time I have the opportunity, like I said, I'm going to talk about Zach Lavine because that's the guy that I think just the highest ceiling raiser. I think the best overall package, like if you want to solve every issue that the Lakers have, the Brooklyn Nets trade is probably the best. Like, because Brooklyn has everything you need to basically build one of the better contenders in the league. Problem is that, like, what will it cost? Is it even realistic? And would the Nets even be willing to ship out all those things when you have all these other teams, right? Like, other teams want Cam Johnson. Other teams want Dorian Finney-Smith. Other teams want, Dennis Schroeder and maybe even Day'Ron Sharpe. To me, I like Zach Lavine because as a singular move, it's the best. It's the highest ceiling raiser. You don't have to trade any of your picks. I mean, Chicago's willing to give up stuff in order to have a team take on Zach Lavine. So, to me, you get the highest ceiling raise. You still have all your picks, and you can still make other moves, right? You could get Zach Lavine, go get a Dorian Finney-Smith, and get like a Day'Ron Sharpe, right? For, let's say, a first. And then now you got Zach Lavine, Day'Ron Sharpe, and Dorian Finney-Smith to add to the rest of your roster, and you only gave up, Gabe Vincent, Rui Hachimura, and D'Angelo Russell, but Zach Lavine by himself is literally this season giving you the same production as all three of those guys, right? And then, maybe you're throwing in like a Jared Vanderbilt and, whatever, a Jalen Hood-Schifino or something to go get the other two. Like, it's not that difficult to pull something like that off. The Lakers could make moves. Problem is that for the Lakers to get Zach Lavine and Nikola Vucevic, you're talking, you'd have to send out like $68 million in salary because you need to be able to fill out a roster still. Now, I did a whole video breaking down how that's possible and how you could break that out, so I don't want to like go in depth in that. Check out that video if you want. But what I want to talk about specifically is, would Zach Lavine, like let's say the Lakers did pull off a move like that, right? And you were able to get Zach Lavine, Nikola Vucevic. Say you didn't even have to give up. They're just like, hey, just take them. We want the salary relief. We want to tank for as good of a pick as possible, right? If you could do some of that, or maybe even one first, so you still have a first for the future, and then you have, the rest of your roster, right? You're going to keep essentially LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Dalton Knecht, and Austin Reeves. Those four guys, the four guys that are staying. So basically, you're looking at, do those four guys plus Zach Lavine and Nikola Vucevic, are those enough for you to win a championship? Now, you'd still have like Christian Wood, and you still have other pieces, but like that's kind of your main, that's your top six, right? I think it might be, right? Like, I've really thought about it. Like, I don't, it's not my favorite, but I also think like, who's stopping them, right? Like, yes, defensively, you have a big problem. Lakers are 27th in defense right now, right? Like, out of the top 10 teams, the Lakers have the worst defensive rating by a mile, right? Like, literally, like, 9 of the top 10 are, like, in the top 10 in defense. The Lakers are the one outlier, right? Do you just supercharge that with, like, a Zach Lavine and a Vu? Right? Like, Vu is not known as this great defensive guy, but now Anthony Davis gets to play the four, so he can kind of play in that free safety role. LeBron James, if he doesn't have to handle as much of a workload, right? Because, you know, you have Zach Lavine and Vu to come in. Both guys go give you 20 a night. Right now, LeBron doesn't have to. It's not all on LeBron. Like, man, if I don't drop 30, we don't have a chance to win, right? Like, so now maybe he can buy in a little more defensively. My concern is that your two best defensive guys on the court are Anthony Davis and then Zach Lavine, right? Now, Zach Lavine has been at or better than league average defensively pretty much every season he's been in the league, outside of, I think, like one or two. But for the most part, he is at least league average or better. Okay, so you're talking about Anthony Davis and Zach Lavine as like your two best defensive guys. And now you have a guy in Austin Reeves who's basically a third. I personally, and this is just me, I would rather have Austin Reeves come off the bench and have Reeves and Connect be off the bench and inject, because you'd have to trade a Jared Vanderbilt, but keep Cam Reddish in the starting unit. I just imagine Zach Lavine, Cam Reddish, LeBron, AD, and Vu. I think because between LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Zach Lavine, and Vu, you have more than enough of offensive production. More than enough of offensive production. And Zach Lavine can initiate the offense. He does it with Chicago all the time, right? Like, he's more than capable of initiating the offense. You always have LeBron that you could default to if you need to wheel and deal, right? To me, that would be the best course of action. I actually think the Lakers might be the best team in the NBA with that. I will say it's something that I would have to see. Don't get me wrong, if the Lakers were to pull something like that off, I'm going to be talking a lot of mess. Just letting you guys know. You just let the Lakers get Zach Lavine and Nikola Vu. Like, I'm going to be talking like we just, just hand us the championship. But if I'm being honest, right, there are questions about it, right? It is questionable. But I do think you would be, again, who's stopping that? Right? Like, Boston matches up decent, but again, the Lakers have Lakers would have the two best players on the court and let's say they ran into each other in the finals, right? LeBron James and Anthony Davis are literally the two best players on the court every night in that matchup, right? The Lakers' third best player would be Zach Lavine, right? Okay, Kristaps Porzingis, let's say healthy, assuming that they're healthy. Who's the third best guy? Kristaps Porzingis. I think based on what both do, right? Because obviously Porzingis fills a hole. I do think that Zach Lavine, again, fills a hole. Based on what they do, I do think you can argue as a wash. But let's give it to Boston, right? Let's say, because Kristaps Porzingis, shot blocking, floor spacing, all of that. Okay, fine. Right? Okay, well, now you go down the list. Fourth best player, okay, Drew Holiday. Lakers' fourth best player would be Nikola Vucevic. Again, I think you give that to Lakers because Vu gives you the rebounding, the size, right? You kind of go down the list. I just think, how do you stop them? Right? Question would be, again, defensively would be a concern. And then people, talk about depth. Again, look at the top teams. Denver, when they won, they had 6 guys. Their 7th guy was Christian Brown, and he was a rookie that year, right? It was Jeff Green had moments, but it was really just their starting 5 in Jamal, KCP, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, and then Nikola Vucevic, right? And then it was Bruce Brown, right? They were only 6-7 deep anyway. They were when Jokic went to the bench, they were running Aaron Gordon at the 5, right? So again, you look at that Boston, they're only 6 deep, really, 7 maybe arguably, right? Pritchard's fun as far as half court shots go and stuff, but he's hot and cold, right? You look at the top teams and the teams that have won the championship the last few years. None of them are really that insanely deep, right? It's just they have one of the best starting 5s in the NBA. If the Lakers were to go get Zach Lavine and Vu, you'd be one of, if not the best starting 5s in the league. And then you'd still have, Dalton Connect. Like I said, I'd probably go with Austin Reeves off the bench, right? I think you're 7 to 9 deep. You'd still have Christian Wood. If Christian Wood can kind of get back to any version, even half of what he was on, on a team like the Houston Rockets and Dallas Mavericks, right? That 17-6 guy. If he can be 8-5, right? That's huge off the bench. And then you have Reeves, and then you have, Connect, and then, can you maybe get an IO in the deal or something, or bring in a Quincy or a Jordan Goodwin or something like that, right? Because again, the style of offense we play, you just need an initiator. I don't know. The more that I think about it, the more that I'm like, that might actually be the best trade. That might be the best move, right? Like, now people are worried about depth. We have one of the worst benches in the NBA. Literally, one of the worst benches in the NBA. So unless you're making trades for depth, which all the moves that the Lakers are trying to make are not for depth. It's to bolster the starting unit, right? Like, Cam Johnson. You're not trading for Cam Johnson to bring him off the bench, right? Like, you're trading for him to slide in and place a Rui, right? You're trying to upgrade Rui for a better natural fit. So to me, like, stop worrying about the bench so much and just be the best starting unit in the NBA. And you're going to trickle guys anyway. I mean, you could always, between Zach Lavine, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Nikola Vucevic, you can always have two of those guys on the court. You could always have a Lavine and a Vu, or Lavine and an AD, or Lavine and LeBron, LeBron and Vu, LeBron and AD and Vu. You could always have one of those bigs and one of the, LeBron or Lavine on the court at all times, right? You just scatter and trickle their minutes. And then you'd still have Austin Reeves. You still have, you'd be fine. Still have Dalton Connect, right? Like, I think that's, like, you got 7-8 guys. Yes, again, defensively, a bit concerning. But I think you'd be good enough between, again, Anthony Davis. Vu is still a big 7-foot guy that can block shots, and he has Anthony Davis backing him up. So I think Vu would be better defensively. I don't think he's going to be great. I think on an island you're kind of in trouble, but I do think, like, defensive scheme-wise, you'll be fine. I think they'll be better defensively than they are right now, but they'll be much better offensively. Much better. They might be the number one overall offense at that point. So you're probably the best. Like, they're top 5 right now. They're probably number 1 or number 2 at worst. And then they're probably top, let's say even if they go to 20th on defensively, right? That's still 7 times better. And then, you add in that they leapfrog 5 positions offensively and 7 positions defensively. You're just better overall, period. Again, I don't hate the idea, right? The more that I think about it, the more I'm like, maybe that's the best way to go. And like I said, you could probably save all your firsts. Right? Like, you probably could save all of them. And yes, it'd be like a 7-for-2 trade. So maybe you have to find a third team, or Chicago just waive a bunch of guys. Like, they don't care. They're not trying to win this year, right? Like, you clear Zach Lavine and Vu's long-term money. So if you have to eat, $10 million this year to clear off a bunch of space next year, like, they're not going to care. And they'd still have guys like Gabe Vincent and Rui who would be expiring next year that they could look to trade and move, right? So, like, they could still go make other moves and other trades and things like that. Or maybe even turn D'Lo into something. I don't hate the idea. I really don't. Like, again, the more that I think about it, the more I'm like, that might be the best move. All right? Like, because you just, again, who's stopping the Lakers? All right? Like, between LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Zach Lavine, and Nikola Vucevic, it's not counting Austin Reeves. Now, Austin Reeves is your 5th best scorer, right? Like, again, now you don't, like, he goes from your 3rd best scorer to your 5th best scorer, right? Like, that's a huge difference, right? Like, and then now Connect goes from your, 4th guy to your 7th, right? Like, the pecking order changes. Everything changes. I don't know. I don't hate it. But anyway, again, however you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. So let me know either way down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out. As we enjoy these types of videos, truly appreciate it. Not subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.